but it couldn't be all bad. Like all of us, my childhood wasn't all bad memories. I remember a lot of good times too. My family growing up loved to go camping. We loved being outdoors. I remember a year my parents sat the four of us down. I was probably 10 and gave us an ultimatum for vacation that year. We could choose from a 3-day vacation in Disneyland in the sunny summer of Southern California, or a 2-week venture by car, towing our pop up tent trailer to different state and national parks. We went camping. My dad was a planner. He sat us down, sat down with us every evening for weeks, going over every last detail of the trip with us, when we would be leaving, and in which direction we would be going first. He would have stacks of AAA maps spanned across the kitchen corner table we had, all four of us kids sitting around the custom storage bench seating that Dad had designed and built, that wrapped around the wall behind the table. Sitting on the handcrafted picnic style bench on the other side of the table, his back to the kitchen, where Mom was making dinner, we planned our adventure. Like I mentioned before, Dad did his best to include us in everything. I remember almost every vacation we went on. Dad was thrifty and was able to take us on these expeditions into our unknown. We would go on hikes, go fishing, wade in cool river pools and mountain spring streams. This year, though, we went to Yellowstone National Park, Zion National Park, Goblin Valley National Park, Bryce Canyon, Arches Canyonlands, Dinosaur Park, you name it. If we could see it and get to it in 2 weeks, we went. Dad was a planner. We had a blast. We never regretted not going to Disneyland. In fact, so much so that I fought my wife on ever going until I was 32 and didn't have to pay for a dime of it myself. Selfish, I know. Maybe I'll get to that story. This vacation was eventful to say the least. Mom got her thumb caught in the mechanical support pole of the tent trailer and needed stitches. A couple days later, little sister was running across a log in Yellowstone, slipped and split her chin open, needing stitches. In Zion National Park, we almost got heat stroke while hiking. I remember the campground from Arches in Moab, Utah, like I was there yesterday. Somewhere along this trip, we went to a Flintstones themed campground. It was just like the Saturday morning cartoons we used to watch. The excavator in the rock pit was there to play on. Dino was just off our sight, and we climbed and played on that statue for a long time. Camping was life. Somewhere in the canyonlands, we found a stream running down the side of a shaded hiking path. We took our shoes off and dipped our hot feet in the clear, cool water. There were these little fishes that came from nowhere and picked little air bubbles that were attached to our soft young toes. I can still feel the nibble of their slippery little fish lips nipping at my webbed toes. Another vacation we took, my mom's extended side of the family, in Lincoln, Nebraska, was having a reunion. They packed the five of us kids up in a late 80s, early 90s model Dodge Ram. Yes, I said five kids this time. Just wait. It looked like the classic Ford Bronco, but it was branded a Dodge Ram, coyote and mud brown, with a mood roof in the rear. It was a pile of crap, to say the least. It broke down all the time, but it was the only thing we had and largest vehicle we'd ever owned, size wise. Seating wise, it only belted 5 souls to its frame. There were 7 of us on this trip. Our teenage cousin was tagging along for the trip. Her seat was in the cargo compartment of the Ram, with either me or one of my siblings sitting back there with her. We drove for 2 or 3 days to get there, stopping along the way for bathroom breaks. A lot. My little sister had a bladder the size of a mustard seed, or so it seemed. We've joked for years every time we're on any trip, anytime we see a gas station. Does anyone have to pee? It'll never get old either, sis. We would stop at antique shops and browse for what felt like hours. My parents loved it. I think mostly my dad, but we got to see some cool stuff along the way. I now live in that same area of the world, and I still love taking the family to browse the antique shops and look at the old ways things were done. On this specific trip, we camped at some lake resort, with so many people I was related to that I'd never heard of before, let alone met in person. It was a lot of fun running around with distantly related cousins, splashing in the lake and basking in the Great Plains summer sun. There was a go kart racetrack next to or inside this campground. I remember going over there with my cousins, Sean, Alex, and a few others. It cost a little bit to ride the track, but I begged my parents long enough that they gave in and gave me some cash to join in. In fact, that's when my dad was labeled a 40-year-old, 14-year-old from the younger cousins. He had the energy to keep up with us for hours. We went round after round after round on those little gas cars. The owner of the track ended up calling a couple employees up, offering extra pay to come help out. He had to start changing tires because we were driving these little machines so much. We eventually found out that the carts had been tuned down to avoid people getting injured. It only took one of the uncles' wallet opening and the willingness to sign a waiver to have them turned up on full throttle. It was on. We raced and raced. We raced until we were utterly exhausted. Our eyes burned from the exhaust cloud surrounding the track and the smoke from the tires squealing around the corners. We finally had to shut it down around 3 a.m. I found my way back to the tent trailer and crashed. That was a good trip. Another of the few times we encountered Mom's extended family was before Nebraska, I believe, probably 2 or 3 years prior. The Nebraska trip was her dad's family's reunion, and this one in Spokane, Washington was her mom's family's side. We took the station wagon, I think, so I don't remember it being too uncomfortable of a trip, like it was in that Ram. Strangely, only two things really stand out to me on this trip. The first was this massive carousel that we went and rode. I swear it was as big as a city block. It was huge. The other thing I remember, and I live to by this day, is my great grandpa telling me, "You know why I eat pie before supper? You never know if you're going to choke on a bone and die. And I like dessert better, anyways. Still love dessert before supper. He was awesome." I still love dessert before supper. He was awesome. Right after we got back from Nebraska, however, is when the fighting ramped up. The four of us kids used to huddle in my sister's closet over the HVAC vent in the carpet and listen to the screaming and fighting. Sometimes it would be below us. Sometimes it was right on the other side of the wall. Sometimes mom's parents would be involved. Sometimes not. But it became constant. If it wasn't quiet, it was loud.